Hello everyone, my extra credit video is going to be about the Gettier case question on page 76, which is question 7. So before we get into answering the question, we kind of have to discuss first what a Gettier case is and what it implies. So the Gettier case comes from the philosopher Edmund Gettier's Is Justified True Belief Knowledge? This takes on two assumptions. One, that a belief can be justified even if it's false, and if you're justified in believing P, P entails Q, and you confidently deduce Q from believing Q as a result of this deduction, then you're justified in believing Q. That's kind of a lot of words there, but essentially what Gettier is trying to say here is, let's take, for example, if you're justified in believing that your dog is a dog, then it is cute. And you deduce that your dog is cute from believing that your dog is cute as a result of this deduction. Then you're justified in believing that your dog is cute. With these two assumptions, the Gettier case question asks us, does justified true belief entail knowledge? So in my dog example, it would be, does my justified true belief in my dog being cute entail that I know that my dog is cute? Because she might not be. Another example of this might be how he uses The Sheep on the Hill, which is from Chris Holm, 1996. This Gettier case reads as this on page 59. You see a rock on a hill. The rock looks exactly like a sheep from your vantage point or your viewpoint. You think that's a sheep, so there's sheep on the hill. As it turns out, there are sheep on the hill, but they are out of view behind the trees past the rock. You have a justified true belief that there are sheep on the hill, but do you know that there's sheep on the hill? So this particular example of a Gettier case, which will help us later in deciding whether the one proposed in the question is one, kind of says, like, just because, like, you have a justified true belief that there is a sheep because there's a rock that maybe looks like a sheep, but in actuality it is a rock, and you just kind of got lucky that there was sheep on the hill, when in actuality what you were looking at was a rock, not a sheep. But we'll go into further detail here on the next couple of slides. So the question here on page 76 reads, you're watching a game of hockey. You see a scuffle between two players, a Penguin and a Red Wings player. Clearly someone committed a foul. In thinking about the two players and knowing their foul percentages, you conclude that the Penguin player is guilty of the foul. Suppose, however, the actual fact is that the Red Wings player is guilty of the foul, not the Penguin player. And then we'll go into further detail on the next slide of deciding whether this is a Gettier case or not. So what's really happening in this question? One, do I make a reasonable deduction following Gettier's second assumption? Arguably, yes. I make the deduction based on my justified belief based on the player's foul percentages, in which the question implies that the Penguin has higher foul percentages, which to me makes sense that the Penguin player must have made the foul. So according to Gettier, my deduction allows me to make a true and justified belief, even if it turns out to be false, which we'll look at point 2. Is my belief justified even though it turns out to be false? The answer is yes, because I have reasonable evidence that the Penguins players' foul percentages are higher. So my belief that it is him that makes the foul is justified and true as a result of my evidence. I will note here that yes, the question doesn't explicitly say that the penguin player has a higher foul percentage as a player, but following the phrasing of the question, I am making the assumption here that because I believe that the penguin player has a higher foul percentage, that he committed the foul. So the question kind of implies it in of itself. I just wanted to make that note before I continue. But is it really a Gettier case? In my opinion, yes. This case shows that even though I have a justified true belief that the penguin player is the one that committed the foul because of his higher percentage fouls, I'm so not a sports person, because of his higher foul percentages as a player, I make a justified true belief that he is the one that committed the foul. But this doesn't necessarily entail knowledge, because it does in fact turn out that the Red Wings player committed the foul. So I indeed have a justified true belief, but I still lack knowledge of the actual fact. Thus, according to Gettier, this is a Gettier case. The question asked, is this a Gettier case? We aren't really looking at if this entails knowledge, just at the fact, does it follow Edmund Gettier's formula for a Gettier case? From the way that it's phrased, I argue that it is. One objection might be that I made an assumption about the language and an implication, as I mentioned earlier in the slide. But I kind of argue too that the language is important, especially in a Gettier case, of deciding whether it accomplishes the fact of trying to show that knowledge can't be defined as just having a justified true belief, which is at the core of having a Gettier case. But that's all I really have for you guys. Thank you so much for listening, and have a great Christmas break.